This video is a complete summary of all canon subject matter towards the series in question. It contains spoilers and details for numerous aspects to the story and its events, and is not meant to serve as a replacement to experiencing any of the pieces of media mentioned. Please support the official releases of the developers and their entries in the franchise. In the region of Garmon, the current governing body established by the Roman Empire is the Roswell family of nobles. The current head of the family is a scholar in archaeology. Lord Roswell specialized in the study of the Saurians, the previous dominant species of Earth, though at this time they were known to humans as primordials, and their existence and behavior were still rooted in mere theory. The Lord's daughter, Laxia, was also interested in her father's study, and would often accompany the Lord in his laboratory and excavations. However, starting when Laxia turned 16, her father's study became an obsession, a focus that grew so overwhelming that he abandoned the upkeep of his house and the surrounding lands. The people began to riot, but the Lord would not lose his obsession. Eventually, his son, Laxia's brother, would take control of the house to try and stabilize the land, but the people's faith in House Roswell had run dry, and the citizenry unseated Laxia's brother, leaving Garmon split between the other noble houses. All of these tribulations drove Laxia's mother ill, and Laxia would come to resent her father. She felt that she did not belong with her house any longer. Thus, Laxia would run away from home, followed only by her devout butler, Franz. Meanwhile, in Felghana, the plans of Bishop Nicholas Garland and Nell are starting to be put into place. The dark beast Galbalan has been regaining power ever since the massacre of Genos' descendants over 11 years ago. With Galbalan's power increasing, his energy of malice conjured from his Ash Emelas body has bled out to the surface, causing monsters to begin to stir across Felghana's forests, caves, and mountains. While not initially overpowering, the threats increased, and travel to the land of Felghana diminished. The townspeople, who were already suffering under the rule of Count Maguire, had their economies suffer as a result. However, the return of these monsters caused another effect. Chester Stoddart's memories of the massacre on Genos Island 11 years ago had been mentally blocked and sealed away, but upon seeing these monsters again, he begins to recall everything that happened. He immediately seeks out his mentor Bearheart, who reluctantly clarifies Chester's past. Chester is enraged and immediately plans revenge on those who had wronged him, namely Maguire and those of Valestein Castle. He plans to gain favor with the Count, pretending to be a loyal knight to get close enough in order to enact his revenge. It only takes a few months for Chester to earn himself a spot among Maguire's most trusted royal knights. Bishop Nicholas learns of Chester's motivations and begins to feed him some information as well, telling him of the statues of Genos needed to revive Galbalan, scattered throughout Felghana. However, he only tells of the statue's immense power, and how to channel it into a means of revenge. Meanwhile, the bishop informs Maguire of the statue's power as well, enticing him to use his resources to find the relics, while the bishop keeps the true purpose of the statues a secret to both of them. Chester seizes this opportunity to appeal to Maguire's lust for power by offering his services in tracking down the statues, while having his own vengeful motives being satisfied as a result. 6 months then pass, with Chester researching the statue's locations, as well as keeping appearances with the Count. He has given no indication to Elena nor the rest of Redmont of where he is or what he plans to do. It's been over a year since the events in Celceta, and 3 years since Adol and Dogi's initial departure from Hysteria. The two wanderers have been exploring the northern area of Europa for quite some time, and are nearing the region of Felghana, the homeland of our thief-turned-traveler Dogi. On their journeys, the two encounter a caravan of nomads and converse for some time. One of their members is a fortune teller who offers her services. Adol isn't too interested, but Dogi decides to give it a try. The fortune teller surprises them both by not only knowing Dogi's name, but his hometown of Redmont, and suggests that their destiny resides in this small town in Felghana. Dogi has been meaning to make a visit to Redmont, and Adol is intrigued to travel to the place where his best friend grew up. They thus set their sights on Felghana. Dogi is excited to not just return home, but to introduce Adol to his childhood friends, specifically the Stoddart children, his friends Chester and Elena. Elena overhears a rumor in town that Chester may be passing near the settlement. As a result, she makes the choice to leave Redmont on her own to see if the tip is true. Adol and Dogi arrive to the latter's homeland by boat. A little turbulent at sea, but none the worse for wear. Dogi is eager to both return home himself and to introduce Adol to his childhood friends. Immediately, some signs of trouble are present, however. A monument dedicated to safe journeys by the docks is destroyed. A bad omen? Or a clue to a greater trouble? Perhaps both. As they are pondering this, however, a beastly growl is heard in the distance, and Adol wastes no time darting off to its source. As Dogi tries to follow, he is surrounded by some wolf-like beasts, and the two are separated. Dogi is instantly startled by the presence of monsters in his homeland. The growl Adol heard brings him to a clearing, where a young woman, Elena Stoddart, is entrapped by a couple of wolves from the same pack. Adol is quick to ready himself and dispatch the encroaching beasts. Elena gives him her thanks as Dogi finally is able to catch up. Dogi doesn't recognize a now-grown Elena, but Elena is able to recognize the gruff wall crusher anywhere. She fills them in, and the two reconnect. Elena then introduces herself to Adol the adventurer, and vice versa. As night looms, the three head back to the town of Redmont, where Dogi grew up. They meet up with Gardner, the elder gatekeeper of the town, who's been guarding the front gate since before Dogi left 8 years ago. Gardner fills Dogi in on the monster threat, which for around a year now have becoming more and more prevalent in Felghana, reducing contact with other regions drastically. Inside Redmont, the group prepares to turn in, and Dogi mentions he's excited to see Elena's brother Chester again, but Elena tells Dogi that Chester is out of town at the moment. All that's for tomorrow, though. The two travelers head into the inn where Dogi reconnects with his old guardian Margot. Margot meets Adol, and are distraught that Adol's introduction to the region is at such a poor time for Felghana. However, for tonight, the two have a hearty meal and proceed to bed. Meanwhile at Valestein Castle, Chester informs Count Maguire that they have found the locations of the 4 statue artifacts. They are preparing a capable party to retrieve these relics in hopes of granting new, unimaginable power to the Count. Come the morning, Dogi tells Adol that he plans to head to the nearby Elder Mountains to see his old master Bearheart. Adol should be able to take care of himself, but if he has any questions, he should talk to Elena. Adol quickly meets and socializes with plenty of the townsfolk. Dogi's childhood friend Joel is working as the bartender of the Inn and Tavern of Redmont. He learns quite a bit, including Dogi's past friendship with Chester and the awful treatment of Count Maguire's Roman faction on Redmont. From heavy taxation to the abrupt shutdown of the nearby quarry, Redmont's main source of export. Specifically, Felghana is famous for Reval ore, a material that is fantastic for crafting and strengthening weaponry, a fact Adol keeps in mind for later. Eventually, Adol checks in on Elena. She and her brother have a house at the edge of town. She informs Adol that Chester has actually not been in Redmont for over 6 months now, with no word on what he's been up to. She knows Dogi will take the news well, but still was apprehensive about telling him after all they had been through as children. The town is a place of worship for the Hieroglyph Church, held by Sister Nell and Father John Pierre. They are worried about the attack last night, as they both care greatly for the Stoddart children. Suddenly, there's some bustle in the town square. Ricardo, a miner, has returned from Tigre Quarry. Out of one of the mine shafts came gushing out waves of monsters. Most of the mining team escaped, but Edgar, the mayor of Redmont, and head miner Dewey are trapped inside. The town's resources are slim. Dogi just left, and Gardner needs to protect the town. Reluctantly, Gardner asks Adol to put his adventurer's skills to use and check out the quarry. Adol happily accepts, as Gardner gives him a map of Felghana and wishes him luck, not without some money and Raval ore to upgrade his equipment first. Cynthia and Adonis help Adol to strengthen his sword. Without further hesitation, Adol heads across the plains connecting Redmont to Tigray Quarry, facing off beasts along the way. At the quarry entrance, Paul, a miner, has been standing guard, and Adol explained why he was here. Paul thanks him profusely. Dewey, the head miner, is near the entrance, but won't leave without finding the mayor. Adol ventures in, exploring the shafts and caverns while fighting off whatever monster might stand in his way. Eventually, he comes across Dewey. He's in a relatively safe spot at the moment, but he's sure the mayor is deeper in the mine, where substantially tougher beasts lurk. Even Adol might not be prepared for those challenges. Maybe there's something in the nearby storehouse that Adol can use. Adol tracks down and starts to explore the storehouse. When a bandaged dark sorcerer reveals themselves to Adol, they introduce themselves as Dularn, and claim to be the Shade of the Great Will. They ask Adol to show them his strength in battle. The two fight. While Adol holds his own, Dularn is not completely satisfied. Still, they deem him worthy to necessitate a report to their master, and departs. With Dularn gone, Adol can explore the storehouse, and finds an Ignis bracelet. With this he can cast a magic firebolt, and give himself the edge against some of the monsters deeper in the mine. Deep within, Adol finds a bloodied but alive Mayor Edgar in front of a grand door. He had hobbled here to seek shelter after being attacked. The ruins here are intriguing, and the mayor asks Adol to investigate in his stead. Inside, a large crystalline figure comes to life. The guardian of a statue, El Fail, begins to attack Adol. Adol dodges her energy blades as he sneaks in hits with his Ignis bracelet, eventually subduing the azure effigy, revealing the statue icon within. The Moonstar statue was now Adol's. Outside the ruins, Chester, along with some of Maguire's men, are scolding the mayor for not closing the quarry like the royal edict enforced. Edgar is in shock that Chester is now working for Count Maguire. Chester insists that he cares not for Dogi or Elena. They don't need him, and certainly he does not need them. Chester advises Adol not to get involved in the region's politics, and if he's come to retrieve the mayor, he should be quick about it before the quarry is closed by force. Adol leads Edgar out of the mine, and the two reconvene at Redmont, where Edgar relays the town's animosity for Count Maguire. His taxes and enforcing of harsh labor is wearing the town away. He doesn't know what to do with Chester either, but as they discuss, Elena overhears from outside and finally discovers the truth about her brother. She runs off distraught. Edgar fills in Adol of their history, how he was the guardian of the Stoddarts ever since they were orphaned 12 years ago. Adol has quickly become a local hero in town after his rescue, but after this incident, Redmont has no choice but to follow Maguire's demands and close the quarry. With the monsters lurking in the mines, it's probably the safest move anyway. After talking with some townsfolk, Adol checks in on Elena, who is trying to process the new information regarding her brother. She shows Adol a pendant that Chester left Elena when he departed from Redmont, a keepsake she holds dear. She tries to remain optimistic, telling herself Chester must have a reason for his alliances, and if anything, she's happy to know that he's alive and mostly well. Now her motivation is to have a meeting with Chester, figure out the truth, and convince him to come home. Adol heads to the nearby church to investigate rumors of the disappearance of Father Pierre. The rumors are confirmed when Adol discusses with Sister Nell and Bishop Nicholas, the pastor appointed at Count Maguire's Failstein castle. Nicholas was formerly Redmont's priest, but was moved to the castle, and now Pierre has filled that role. According to Nicholas, Pierre has taken it upon himself to investigate the nearby Ilburn's ruins, which contains an antiquated pagan temple. The reason for his journey is unknown. More importantly, though, the ruins are incredibly dangerous, and as such, the two clergymen ask Adol to investigate on their behalf, having proven his skill in the quarry. Nicholas gives Adol the key to the ruins and wishes him luck. Adol finds the Ilburn's ruins easily enough towards the northeast. Within, he indeed discovers some fearsome foes that challenge Adol's abilities, while uncovering secrets to greatly empower his items. Deeper in the ruins, Adol finally comes across Pierre, who is being confronted by Chester, encouraging the priest to leave at once. Pierre is more concerned with Chester's absence from Redmont and the secrets that he's keeping from Elena. Before he can respond, Chester notices Adol, who is annoyed by Adol's lack of adherence to his warning in the quarry. As such, Chester seeks to make an example and begins a duel. It's an evenly matched duel, and Chester acknowledges Adol's skill. Before Chester can go all out, though, Count Maguire arrives and orders his men to seize Adol and Pierre. The Count went to investigate the temple himself, to worship and look for one of the statues. Chester informs him of the intruder's nature. A clergyman is one thing, but an adventurer cannot be allowed to lurk through the Count's domain. He could likely seek out the statues, and a traveling newcomer like him would likely not be missed. So, Maguire orders the disposal of Adol. Chester leads the squadron to a precipice over a seemingly bottomless pit. Chester forces Adol over to the edge at sword point. Maguire approves of the method and orders Chester to force Adol off. Chester once again admonishes Adol's nosiness and kicks the adventurer off the ledge. Pierre is in disbelief at Chester and condemns the lot of them. Maguire ignores the prattle, praises Chester, and leaves him to look for the statue. Pierre is taken away with the Count. Sometime later, a bruised and injured Adol lies collapsed in a smoldering chasm. He awakens hurt, but alive, in a deep magma-filled region of the ruins. Time to look for a way out. The area is even more hazardous than the above levels, and the swordsman battles his way through the caverns. He finds a Ventus bracelet, imbuing Adol with the power of wind. This allows him to hover in the air via a tornado spin. Upon acquiring the bracelet, however, Dularn reveals himself, commenting that Adol has found 2 of the powers of Genos. They claim that the fires of hell will consume Adol before the sorcerer flees. This curse becomes apparent when pyres chase Adol into an arena where a fire centipede begins to attack him. Dodging and striking through the lava-filled pits, the beast is hard to pin down, but eventually, it's subdued. Adol continues to make his way up through the caverns. The way back to the ruins proper is in reach, but stopping him is a large bird-like demon that must be taken care of. Upon defeat, the sunset statue can be found in its remains. Adol recognizes its similarities with the previous statue obtained in the quarry, and begins to notice a pattern. Across the bridge, used as a battleground, Adol makes his way through the main areas of the Ilburn's ruins once again. It isn't long before he runs into the elusive Chester. Chester knew Adol would survive, counting on it in fact, and he less than politely asks for the 2 statues in Adol's possession. This time, though, Chester is the one outnumbered. Elena and Dogi arrive to Adol's aid. They had heard about Adol's trip to find Pierre and went looking for the both of them. Elena reveals that she doesn't mind Chester becoming a knight, but these specific actions, hurting Adol and kidnapping the priest, why? And why not tell her anything? Chester is cold in his replies, saying Redmont was a menial existence for him, and babysitting Elena wasn't suitable. Joining Maguire was his means of becoming something more, something greater. Dogi lashes out, but Chester voices that Dogi shouldn't sound so hypocritical, given his own decisions to leave town. In any case, Chester knows when he is outnumbered and cannot win, and deduces that the statues will likely be safe enough in Adol's possession, for now. Chester leaves with his final insistence that his former friends and family forget about him. Back in Redmont, Mayor Edgar, Minor Dewey, Bishop Nicholas, Adol, and Dogi meet to discuss what's been going on. They are all definitely distraught by Chester's actions, but there are bigger issues. Maguire has gone from being a harsh ruler to an actively hostile force to Redmont, with the closure of the quarry and the kidnapping of Pierre. Nicholas has no insight to the motivations of the Count. His wife and children attend his sermons without him. As a fellow member of the clergy, Nicholas intends to have a word with Maguire regarding the release of Father Pierre. They also look at the statues that Adol has collected, and theorize there might be a correlation between them and the emergence of the demons. Dewey thinks he can remember something. In an old abandoned mine in the quarry, there was a mural that might have depicted something like these statues. 4 of them. It's as good a lead as any, and Adol and Dogi start planning. Adol will investigate the mine, while Dogi heads back to the mountains to ask Berhart about these statues. Berhart is apparently very knowledgeable in the local legends, and might have some insight on Chester as well. They once again separate, and Adol heads off to the quarry once more to seek the abandoned mine. On his way out, Elena confronts Adol, asking him to, if he sees Chester again, to thank him for the pendant. She wishes him luck, and tells Adol to be careful. Adol heads to the entrance of the abandoned vein, where some miners are waiting, guarding the passage. They give him their support, and Dewey lets Adol know that not only is there a mural, but a strange, rocky mound at the bottom of the caverns. Not like Raval, though. It was green, crystalline, and in some way pulsating like a heartbeat. The mine is dark and ominous. Adol has to stay alert to have the upper hand against these challenging foes. Within the mines, Adol finds the mural that was spoken of. The mural depicts a Winged One warrior below a demonic eye symbol, surrounded and sealed by 4 different statues, of which Adol immediately recognizes. As he stares, a voice speaks to the swordsman.
I speak to thee of a being who came from beyond the sea and defiled this land. We must pray for its erasure from this world so that future generations may know true peace. With vortices of purest malice, it twists the living into monsters most vile and deranged. Its inhuman powers are enough to subjugate even the lords of the spirit world. Indeed, the mightiest of them turned to dust in its wake, leaving Felghana to rot. Truly, it is a devil, for no hand of man could wreak such despair. Its name, Galbalan. I am Genos. I am a warrior from the west, brought here through divine providence. I sought to sever the devil's grasp on this land, but my sword could only divide it and seal it with unholy treasures. Yet even now, the machinations of the wicked threaten to reunify those heinous remnants. Swordsman, thou art to be my successor. I grant thee a measure of my strength.
Genos, the Eldeen, who fled his homeland to smite the legendary Galbalan, has blessed Adol on his journey, and supplied him with a new gift, fitting of the Winged Ones, the ability to double jump.
The treasures number 4 in total. 2 lie herein. 1 lies amidst hellish brimstone, and the last sits high atop a mountain. Thou must make haste, swordsman. The resurrection is nigh.
The treasures must be the 4 statues. Adol has one already from the quarry, and 1 from the hellish brimstone, meaning the second must still be in the mine. Time to go searching. At the deepest levels of the mine, Adol finds the large crystal mentioned by Dewey, but it's guarded by a worm-like creature that Adol must defeat to claim its prize. However, as soon as it's defeated, the real monster reveals itself. The worm was just 1 arm of the creature, as the real beast was the crystal itself. The beast reveals its true form, and once it's defeated, the crystal shell shatters to reveal the 3rd statue inside, the Darkness statue. Adol heads back through the mine and quarry, and then returns to Redmont to report of what he has learned. Things are fairly gloomy in town, with monsters spreading and more than one person from town displaced as a result of Maguire's machinations. Eventually, Adol heads to the mayor's house, where he and Father Pierre are waiting. It seems Bishop Nicholas was able to convince the Count to let him go. Unfortunately, he couldn't get answers regarding Chester or the statues. Thankfully, though, Adol is more than happy to pick up the slack in that regard. After filling them in, Edgar admits that Genos and Galbalan are the center of a local legend that now appears to hold more truth than they realized. There's also the matter of the aptly named Genos Island, just off the mainland, home to a village that Edgar claims was annihilated by a severe disease. Adol's next destination is clear: the Elder Mountains. It's likely the location of the last statue, and Adol wants to meet up with Dogi and Bearheart. Bearheart is likely to know more about Genos and Galbalan than anyone in Felghana. With no time to waste, Adol sets off for the north. The cold snow of the Elderms are home to their own breed of monsters, which Adol must fend off just to reach Dogi's master. At a clearing near Bearheart's, Dularn awaits. Now that Adol has made contact with Genos, he cannot be allowed to live. As such, they send 3 Harpy flyers down to take care of Adol. Adol has grown stronger than Dularn imagined, though, and is able to dispatch of the 3 with relative ease. Dularn is distraught and needs to think through their next move carefully before fleeing. Finally, Adol arrives at Bearheart's isolated cabin in the mountains. Bearheart is quick to recognize the adventurer based on Dogi's description, and they introduce themselves. Adol explains why he is here, and Bearheart enlightens the traveler. He assures Adol that the local legends that Edgar described, and Adol had heard, were factual history. With Genos sealing Galbalan with 4 statues, the holy treasures, the monsters that have appeared are a result of Galbalan's demonic essence bleeding out into the region. Perhaps Maguire believes he can control these monsters. Dogi has just left to search the ice caverns within the mountains for the final statue, and Adol is eager to give chase. Deep within the caves, Adol finds Dogi, and they fill each other in. Their progress is cut short by a large gorge that stands in front of them. It should be just small enough, though, for Adol to make it across, using his double jump and tornado hover. Dogi will have to stay behind, and Adol will go it alone in the search for the final statue. Before he goes, though, Dogi gives him an artifact he found, a Terra bracelet to command the powers of Earth. Adol will continue, while Dogi looks for a longer way around. Deep within the mountain, Adol is faced with a giant clump of ice, with a faint sound of breathing coming from it. Suddenly, an encased dragon guardian breaks free, and begins to attack the adventurer. Once defeated, the final statue reveals itself, the Light statue. Now all together, the 4 statues begin to resonate with each other, engulfing the cave with unnatural light. For a moment, it seems that the rumbling resonation caused a cave-in towards the entrance of the clearing. Fortunately, Dogi calls out from the other side, and is able to do what he does best, and crushes the wall separating them. With the statue in hand, they make their way back to Bearheart's. However, as soon as they leave the caves proper, the 2 are confronted by Chester. Chester has been tracking these 2 for some time, and knows that they have all 4 statues, and demands them to hand them over. Dogi has put some pieces together, though. He knows that Chester has his own interests, separate from the Count's, especially when it comes to these statues. It was obvious that Chester could not feel such contempt for Elena. Chester reveals that Dogi is correct. What he really seeks is revenge. Chester reveals that Genos Island was actually the place of his and Elena's birth. It was not wiped out by a plague, but rather humanoid monsters, armored skeletons that appeared out of nowhere. They started massacring the village. The village's warriors attempted to fight back, but the creatures wouldn't stay dead. Elena and Chester were the only survivors who were able to flee the island. He later learned that the attack was planned and orchestrated by a dark sorcerer under the employ of Count Maguire. His people were Genos' descendants, tasked to guard the lock on the demon Galbalan. As such, Maguire must have seen his people as some sort of roadblock to his plans that needed to be cleared. As a result, Chester intends to force everyone in Veilstein Castle to burn in hell for what they were accomplices to, and Chester will use the power of the statues to make it happen. Adol and Dogi take a moment to process what they've learned, and Dogi has to ask, what then? Will Chester be satisfied by revenge? How will Elena react? He should go to Redmont and tell the townsfolk of what Maguire has done and work to overthrow just Maguire. Together, send him to exile, and then Chester can return home. Chester refuses. He's too far gone at this point. He shouts his decline to Dogi's offer, and to seal his path, he plunges his blade into Dogi's chest, wounding him severely. Dogi can be saved if brought immediately to care, and Chester will allow it, if Adol hands over the statues. Adol obliges, and Chester takes his leave, eager to enact his plans. He discourages any attempt to stop him, and leaves the mountain. Adol quickly takes Dogi to Bare Hearts, where he rests in his care. The Master takes responsibility and admits his sins. 12 years ago, he was a Veilstein knight, and was sent as backup to Maguire's sorcerer to cut down any villagers that tried to escape. But then he saw the Stoddarts, Elena and Chester, and couldn't bring himself to kill the children, and instead hid them to make it to Redmont. He then cast aside his knighthood and began to research Genos and Galbalan, as well as Maguire's plans involving them. His students Dogi and Chester knew Bearheart saved Chester's life, but not that he was a knight. Last year, when monsters returned, Bearheart told Chester everything about his past, and it was a lot to process. He has no idea how exactly Chester plans to use the statues, but his motivation is stern if it meant hurting Dogi. Bearheart will stay and look after the Wall Crusher. Adol needs to head to the village and tell Mayor Edgar what happened. Adol returns to a gruesome sight. Soldiers and guards lie dead on the bridge leading to Redmont. Gardner is there injured and says how soldiers from Veilstein attacked the village, with some making it inside. Adol quickly rushes in to aid, where he sees Elena and another village girl huddled in the town square, with knights approaching in. Adol quickly jumps into action, saving the two of them. The two thank the swordsman, and Elena notices how flustered he is. Adol tells Elena what Chester has done, and she can't keep her distress to herself. Nell, Pierre, and Edgar arrive from the church, where most of the town is retreated to for safety. They are all clueless as to what could have led the Count to send an attack on the town. The soldiers were odd, though, attacking speechless, with robotic-like movements. At the mayor's home, Adol explains Chester's past and motivations, and move on to what must be done regarding the castle. They are suggesting speaking with Bishop Nicholas once again, but Nell arrives saying Elena has run off out of town, likely once again eavesdropping and has gone after Chester. Seems like Adol has more than one reason to head to Veilstein Castle. They wish the swordsman luck as he departs. At the entrance to Veilstein Castle, a maid, Fran, awaits out front, and Adol asks if she has seen Elena come through. She says that she couldn't see anything as she was fleeing the castle. According to Fran, and a couple soldiers with her, a fog escaped the castle's clock tower, and anyone it touched entered a mindless, murderous state, attacking everyone in the castle. Soldiers and staff who weren't possessed were forced to flee. Adol enters the castle. Elena and dozens of people are still in danger if they stay there. He makes his way through the castle, taking down zombified staff and guards within the fortress. In a secure room high in the castle, Adol comes across part of a family, shaken but safe. It's Maguire's wife and two children. Initially startled, Adol assures them that he means no harm. They drop their guard once they see that Adol's mind is his own. The woman is named Elizabetha, her children, Alice and Christoph. Adol explains his situation, and they believe him. Chester was planning on sparing the family, who was also kept in the dark regarding Maguire's actions. Chester told them to stay in the safe room before he triggered the fog with the statues. While she agrees that her husband's actions are unforgivable, the rest of the staff in the castle are as innocent as they are, and Chester must be stopped. She asks Adol to put a stop to whatever it is Chester is doing with the statues. The daughter, Alice, was able to grab something from Chester's pocket, an ivory key, and gives it to Adol. Deep within the castle, an armored demon knight waits to stop Adol from lurking about the fortress's innards. Adol is able to barely win his battle, and afterwards the knight drops a single pipe for an organ. Adol passed by a large organ on his exploration, and returns to investigate further. He returns, and indeed the organ is missing both a pipe and a key, of which Adol replaces both. Something else appears to be missing though, a symbolic hieroglyphic cross, likely the last piece of this puzzle. Adol continues his search, and comes across the good Bishop Nicholas. He's safe, but has no clue what is happening, and so Adol explains. Chester had locked Nicholas in this chamber as soon as the fog spread. Apparently, the clock tower can interact with the spiritual energy running through Felghana, and that energy will allow the statue's powers to be harnessed. This would have allowed the fog to be created. Likely, the Count wanted the statues to create monsters and extend his influence, but this fog, to transform and massacre the castle, was undoubtedly Chester's doing. Adol asks about the organ, and Nicholas believes that it may be the key towards accessing the clock tower. Deeper in, an armored wolf-like demon guards the top of some barracks and attacks Adol. Once he fends off the beast, it drops an icon of a hieroglyph cross, the last piece to complete the organ. Adol returns the cross, and immediately a song begins to play. Once it's finished, a door in the chapel reveals itself. A secret set of passageways within the castle. Upon taking out a clockwork metal guardian, Adol discovers Elena, along with a miner named Bob and a castle guard, Andre. Bob was long thought dead by the people of Redmont, but was actually captured after overhearing a conversation between Chester and some soldiers. Andre was captured and sent here by Chester when he tried to flee the encroaching fog and the corrupted soldiers. Elena has been informed of everything by Chester, regarding their past and his plans. She understands his feelings, but his actions are still taking it too far, and she begs Adol to stop her brother. Andre gives Adol the key to the clock tower, and Adol continues his quest to stop Chester. The three will likely be safe here for the time being. Throughout the clock tower, Adol finds the 4 statues that have been placed in order to conduct some kind of channeling ritual that has caused the foggy essence to spread throughout the castle. After obtaining the statues, Adol makes his way to the top of the tower. There, Chester has finally confronted the Count. After Chester describes his origins, Maguire feigns ignorance, claiming he wanted the islanders' assistance, not their extermination, never giving that order. Chester isn't buying the pathetic excuse, and readies to make the Count pay for his crimes in blood. But before Chester can strike him down, Adol approaches, and Chester is angered at Adol's continued meddling. If Adol stands in the way of those he must cut down, then Adol will be among the bodies. A battle between swordsmen commences, each using their skills, arsenal, and experience in an attempt to gain the upper hand. However, it ends in a stalemate, with both acknowledging the other's skill. Chester has to put the duel on hold, however, as he sees the Count fleeing to the roof of the clock tower. Chester gives chase, as does Adol, arriving to see Chester holding Maguire at an overhang on the roof of the clock tower. This time, Chester will waste no time. Before Adol can react, Chester readies his blade. But then, Elena arrives to offer her objection, begging her brother to stop. Chester remains unswayed. This is his burden alone, to deliver justice and punish these crimes. But Elena knows this is not what their people, their family, would have wanted. This vengeance will not bring them back, nor help them rest in peace. Chester must stop. He cannot torture himself with the shackles of revenge any longer. Just as Chester seems to have been appeased and calmed, a rumbling chime commences in the clock tower, and Chester immediately asks Maguire for answers. Maguire says he has no idea of the chime's source. Using the statues was his idea. He was just doing what he was told. Told? By whom? Just then, the real ringleader reveals himself. The good bishop, Nicholas Garland, arrives to the roof of the tower. The chime they heard signals that the statue's power has been transferred over to his god, the true god, Galbalan. Nicholas had told Chester about how to use the statue so he may act his revenge, but in actuality, it was just to get the power in place and ready to be used for the revival of Galbalan. Nicholas had been carefully feeding information to both Chester and Maguire for his plans, and it had gone perfectly. The 4 streams of power from the statues will now flow beneath the land straight to Genos Island, where Galbalan has been sealed, with the fog being a mere byproduct of this action. Nicholas had cast aside his hieroglyph beliefs long ago, and placed them into what he believed to be a tangible entity, Galbalan. How much of his beliefs are from Galbalan's hypnotic influence or his own devolution is unknown, and likely not important. Chester, angered at the discovery of the true cause of all his suffering, leaps towards Nicholas. Nicholas is guarded by a mystical force field, but Chester is able to destroy it using the brave sword, the Blade of Genos. Before he can attack the bishop himself, though, Nicholas's faithful servant Dularn appears and attacks Chester, knocking him back unconscious. Afterward, Adol takes his place and attempts to battle Nicholas, who adopts a large demonic form. Adol cannot hope to match the strength, and also collapses. Nicholas is disappointed, but not surprised. He motions to take Chester with him. Apparently, a descendant of Genos is needed for the final piece of the ritual. But Elena interjects. Take her instead. She also has the blood of Genos inside her, and asks Chester to be relieved of this burden. How touching. Fine. Nicholas obliges, and Dularn takes Elena away, but not without her giving some final thanks to Adol for all he's done, and asks him to look after Chester. Nicholas bids farewell, leaving Adol, Maguire, and Chester on the clock tower roof. Eventually they all return to Redmont. Chester has been taken to the mayor's house to rest, and the next day, Adol fills in Edgar and Pierre on what has happened. Both distraught based on what has taken place and who is to blame. Their outlook is bleak, but suddenly Bearheart arrives to give aid. Bearheart will lead the village's able-bodied soldiers to defend the town against the possessed guards. Everyone else should stay in the church for safety. Bearheart tells Adol of a dock to the north that he can use to sail to Genos Island when he is ready, and Adol understands. Adol meets with Chester before he leaves, who has awoken recently. Chester apologizes for his actions and acknowledges his loss of innocence after his actions and what he helped cause. He asks Adol for his strength to save his sister, as well as Felghana as a whole. He gives him the Brave Sword to help accomplish the task. It is a magical sword passed down through descendants of Genos. Not long after, Chester collapses into a deep sleep. Most of the town is in the church, but Pierre notes that Sister Nell is missing, a bit curious and worrying. Maguire's family is staying at Redmont Inn at the moment, surviving, though Maguire has plenty on his mind. His wife will make sure her husband pays for his crimes. The townsfolk prepares for their defense, as Adol heads to the dock to end this once and for all on Genos Island. At the docks, Dogi awaits. He's mostly recovered and insists this is no time for him to be resting. Dogi insists on coming with, if only to help navigate the boat through the choppy waters. Adol accepts and the 2 travelers head off for Genos Island. The 2 are ready to investigate the home of the Stoddarts, but Dogi's injury starts acting up. It's hard for him to move, and he needs to rest after the boat journey. Adol will have to proceed on his own. Just as Adol enters the island caverns, there's an arena-like opening, and Adol hears a familiar voice. Sister Nell approaches. She's surprised at Adol's approach after his failure to defeat Garland at the castle. Brave or foolish, it matters not. Nell cannot allow Adol to pass. She formally reveals herself as the sorcerer, Dularn, and the final battle between the 2 commences. Dularn is tough, but not invincible. With the Brave Sword, Adol is able to take down the tragic loyalist once and for all. Nell respects the swordsman's strength and growth, and tells of how Nicholas saved her life and soul, and, at a time, was kind, but one day went to the Ilburn's ruins and came back having been changed by Galbalan's corruptive influence. Nell kept faith in him, though, resulting in her corruption as well. She was the dark sorcerer who led the attack on Genos Island with Nicholas and Maguire. Her body has become demonic. Her blood has turned blue, and her skin begins to crack as if a physical facade is breaking. She understands the faults in her blind devotion and her actions, and asks that, with his power, maybe Adal can, in fact, save Elena. She thanks Adal before disappearing into the air. Adal enters the Dark Shrine, where the last demonic challenges await, those that separate him from Nicholas and Elena. In the deepest depths of the shrine awaits Garland, who is expecting Adal. He's disappointed in Nell's failure, believing her faith to not be strong enough. He is completely lost in the ideals of Galbalan and anxiously awaits his god's return, and will be damned if Adal attempts to stop him now. As such, he readies his mystical appearance, which is now vulnerable thanks to the brave sword in Adal's possession. Fully equipped, Adal readies himself to take down the Mad Priest. Adal is able to defeat the energy that has become Garland, but no matter. The key has already been set, and the ritual cannot be stopped. Adal quickly proceeds down a final platform to the place of sealing, where Galbalan slumbers. There he sees Elena, trapped in place for the ritual. She begs Adal to flee this place, as Galbalan will soon be awakened, and it's too late to stop it. Adal won't survive in the shrine for long. But suddenly it seems that it might be too late to even flee. Galbalan begins to stir. Its memories and consciousness begin to awake. Its purpose, to eliminate the winged Eldeen, and to seize the Ark of Nepishtim rising to the surface before it's overwhelmed by its memories of Genos and the land of Felghana, the only Galba to achieve true sentience. The rebel against both the Eldeen and Darklings, this being sought the destruction of humanity. And with Genos' physical presence gone, it may just well succeed. The demon begins to rumble, before a voice calls in protest. Chester arrives and leaps to Elena's platform where he frees her. Before he has time to explain, he calls out to Adal to use the brave sword, the Sword of Genos, to defeat the awakened Galbalan once and for all. The battle is long and gruesome, with Galbalan casting spells and attacks that are almost too strong for Adal to manage. Eventually, Adal can subdue the creature long enough to stay dazed. The sword is not strong enough to destroy it completely though, and the mad beast's power is still growing. But Chester has an idea. He knows of a last resort plan put in place by his ancestors. Using the statues and the brave sword, it's possible to focus the statue's power to a breaking point on the island, destroying it, and likely taking out Galbalan with it. But the explosion must be manually triggered by the sword, and Chester will need to stay behind to activate it. Elena can't allow him to go through with this, but Chester insists on making amends for his actions, to face his ancestors with pride. Elena struggles to talk him out of it, but Chester has made up his mind, and knocks out Elena before she can convince him. Chester asks Adal to take care of her, and to apologize to Dogi for him, as he runs to the demon. Adal takes Elena and flees, while Chester informs the waking Galbalan that its revival will be cut short as he begins the chain reaction to destroy the entire Dark Shrine with him and the all-powerful Galba. Back at Redmont, Burhart and the soldiers are attempting to fight off the undead and possessed demons when suddenly they evaporate into raw energy following the destruction of their god. The island rumbles and shakes as the light pours from the deep shrine, igniting the island in an awe-inspiring blast, leaving a beaming pyre visible to all in Felghana. The light remains for a few moments as the remainder of the island begins to break away and sink into the sea. Those with the best view, though, being Adol, Dogi, and Elena, who were able to escape via their ship. A few days pass, and the village of Redmont has begun to recover. Adol and Dogi are readying to take their leave of the region as Adol wishes to give his goodbye to Elena, but she's locked in her house, having not left since returning from the island. Dogi insists that it's best to give her space, and they'll see her again someday. The two give their goodbyes to the rest of the townsfolk. Pierre is distraught by Nell's true nature, as she was a mentor to him, though he will choose to remember her for the good she did as Nell, not the bad as Delarn. The village children have made friends with the children of the Count and Countess. Margot and Bearheart wish them the best, and the quarry seems to be reopening soon. The mayor, saddened by the sacrifice of his adopted son, will choose to remember him for what he accomplished in life, his sacrifice for all of Felghana. Count Maguire swears to spend every day making up for his actions, and his wife, Elizabetha, will hold him to it. At the bridge outside of town, Dogi has to break his own news to Adol. He wants to stay in Redmont to help rebuild the region. A lot of changes are coming to his hometown, and he wants to be there to help every step of the way. Adol, though, needs to keep adventuring. It's the only way forward for him, and they both know it. This is only temporary, though. Soon Dogi will catch up, and their travels together will continue. They give a quick, tearful farewell before Adol makes his way to the docks on his own. But wait, someone still wants to say goodbye to the adventurer. Elena rushes out of her house, where Dogi tells her that she just missed him, but if she hurries, she can probably catch Adol at the dock. Adol is still at the pier, setting up his departure, when Elena arrives. She owes him so much despite their brief time together. She needed to say goodbye, thank him, and tell him how she's going to keep on living, become braver, as her brother would have wanted. While Chester's actions weren't always pure, his intentions were to be a defender of Felghana, and she will carry out that responsibility. Her oath to Chester to protect all of Felghana. With a heartfelt goodbye, Elena sees Adol off, departing for new lands with new stories to tell. The land of Felghana, being added to the rapidly growing list of places that have become changed after Adol's travels. The red-haired adventurer's life always touching so many others, bringing excitement and bravery to any place within exploration's reach. Will the Eldeen and their legacy cross paths with Adol the Adventurer once again? The answer awaits in the journeys ahead.